And so I finished 4 earlier this year, and I thought that was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. I did start 5, but then I think that's when Breath of the Wild came out, or maybe 16, one of them. So I'll have to get back to that at some point. And my plan is I do want to work through all of them. And 10 is a game that I started like 2 or 3 times, and I never got past like the first sort of opening sequence before I just went, I can't be fucked with this, so I'll come back to it another time. This is the HD remaster I'm playing on Steam, which comes with 10.2 as well, which I'll probably play afterwards. But I don't know where I stand with it. And I think part of the problem is... Oh, as I drop something on my keyboard. I think part of the problem with it is that up until 10, you know, you never look at these games as like, it's kind of a product of its time and it's not aged particularly well, because I don't know, I just think of like anything before then is just, that is from that generation, and either it's timeless like A Link to the Past, or it's just this kind of weird sort of janky thing from the sort of PS1 era. But then as soon as you get to the PS2 and anything onwards, I guess there's enough that you can kind of attach it to this is sort of like modern day gaming, kind of. Whether it's, you know, stuff like the resolution of textures is a little bit higher, there's voice acting, there's like a little bit more kind of movement.
Now.
This is the difference. Yeah. This is what we're hitting on, though. This game features voice acting. That's why he hates it.
Let me tell you. Well, this is the thing, right? But because the voice acting in this game is terrible. Like, it is utterly fucking atrocious. Wrong. And part of the problem is because I've been playing Final Fantasy XVI, which is some of the best voice acting I've ever heard.
Fine.
No, I think the voice acting in 16 is really, really strong. I like it. But like, you've got John DiMaggio, God bless him, but he is doing, I think he's trying to do a Caribbean accent, but he ends up turning into like a Mexican gangbanger at points, and he kind of blurs the line between the two of them. And I guess if they did this in 2023, on a scale of 1 to
Jar Jar Binks, how bad is it?
It's not that bad.
No, but there actually is like some sort of ferryman that exists that basically might as well be Jar Jar Binks that does exist in the game, but you only get about 3 or 4 lines of dialogue from. That's the one. Yes.
Shoop-Off. I love the Shoop-Off guy. How can you hate the guy?
Like, right, the Shoop-Off? He's like German. He's not Jar Jar Binks.
I didn't say. I'm sorry. There's at least enough there. So I think one of the things that does age this game is I think that the voice acting is quite poor. But what the problem I think on top of that as well is that, like, now I haven't played enough of Final Fantasy IX to remember, but even with like 7 and 8, like the dialogue of those games is fairly well fleshed out. They're not by any means the best written games of all time, but there is there's weight and there's depth and there's a lot to those stories and those narratives. And I think because this is the first one that has full-on voice acting, I feel like they kind of dial back the dialogue. I don't want to say dumb down, but it feels like there's less dialogue, and the dialogue that is there is a bit clunky because there's voice acting.
I think it's just the voice acting, because like the depth of characters and writing is, if anything, a little more than some of the games you've played.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a really heavy story, Mark. Like when you finish
it. I love the gimmick that, Mark, you can't even get into, finally, after all, I'm sure, the years of persuasion, get into one of Jack's favourite video game franchises without grossly upsetting him with all your takes on it.
I mean, look, you were here when we spoke about FF8 now, so come on. I disagree. I think, here's the thing, I think the themes and the kind of concept that they're going for in terms of the story, thumbs up. I think, exploring like these ideas on religion and religious zealots and I guess sacrifice. I'm at that point now. All of those things I think are very interesting ideas to explore, and like there's enough here that I want to see this thing through. I think the execution of a lot of it is pretty poor, and I think that the dialogue, both in terms of the voice acting and just the actual like narration itself, I think is quite poor. But I also concede that, this is a game that's over 20 years old, so,
Yeah, that, and you're wrong.
He's wrong. Yeah, you're wrong. Yeah. It's the most important part, is you're wrong.
Welcome to having an opinion.
They're in your wrongness and be wrong.
Yeah. Studio 60 never had a line that good.
Yeah. See, the heat was on Garrett before about his defending executives, but now it's back on Mark.
So I think, I think with Final Fantasy games, a lot of the time they come into kind of 3 flavors. Either you like the story, you like the systems, or you end up liking both. And currently, I think with this, I like the systems of this game. I do think that the sphere grid and the way you have character progression used in that, I think is really like unique and for the most part, there's a couple of like UI tweaks I would do to it, but for the most part, I think it's a fairly well executed system.
I think the sphere grid,
they never came back to.
Mark, I think the sphere grid is responsible for what has become the modern skill tree in gaming, because they are all like shittier versions of what that sphere grid
they're all
was.
like nodes on a screen, and you unlock the nodes, and it all looks like that, doesn't it?
That. It does, yeah. And I want to say Final Fantasy X is the first game I remember doing that. And like you said, like the smart thing about it is you do have a sphere grid where you can unlock all the spheres for everyone, but everybody starts in their own individual areas. So it's like you build out all of the skills, the core skills of your character before you can kind of progress any further to kind of get different moves and different skills to other characters, and then you can kind of overlap, and it makes it interesting. And picking different directions for your characters to go in makes it interesting as well, because it's like, well, you know, this person, say like Auron, has like all the power moves and break, but do I want to direct him towards some magic? Do I want to direct him towards like knowing some of the like, you know, white magic spells? Or do I want him to know some green magic? Do I want him to be casting hate? Like all of these things that you can do and choose. It's really, really good, and it's really, really in depth. And the modern version of it is like shitty nodes on the screen, really dumbed down, that you just sort of activate.
There's an astonishing. I mean, you again looking like Final Fantasy XVI in terms of the
which is still nodes on a screen. Like it's the same thing.
Yeah, it is, but it's just like, here's 3 things you can do. Here's like one additional attack,
and it's all about make these attacks more power. Like the attack you're already using is 12% more powerful.
Yeah. And there's one character as well for you to upgrade. So it is the most dialed down version of that. I wish the one thing with the sphere grid that I would do is I wish that you could fucking zoom out a little bit. Because I feel like the navigation of it is a bit clunky.
You can zoom out.
And like, can't see, there's no option I can see how to do it.
You can zoom out.
I see no UI prompt on the screen that says you can zoom out.
I can't remember the button, but you can definitely zoom out on the sphere grid, because otherwise how would you know where to go?
Because that's the thing. I'm having to fucking like just traverse across the sphere grid until I stumble across like the character.
You do know what Google does, right, Mark? You can just
but no, I looked. I couldn't find anything
to
on
Mark's
that.
point, I would say when this game originally came out, there wasn't a Google. So if Mark was playing this game at the time, he'd be fucked.
No, he wouldn't, because there'd be a manual for him to look at.
The other thing I was going to say about the sphere grid as well. Oh yeah, so the one issue that the one major issue I had with it is that so I had the fucking fight with the dragon on the airship today, which I finally got my first death of the game, and then got another subsequent 4 deaths from the bastard.
Did you use the airship to attack it like I suggested?
Yeah, of course I did. Yeah, that's what I did for those first 4 deaths, but that wasn't the reason I died. But the issue that I had with it is that I didn't have Yuna has the Asuna ability, and so I wanted to give Asuna to one of my other characters, but the problem is the game uses like the sort of real world logic that Yuna isn't there like with the gang during that part of the story. So I was scrolling around like the sphere grid looking for a character before eventually realizing and talking with someone on Twitter that she's not available during that part because she's obviously not getting married with the gang, which is like,
you want to drag her away from her wedding. Force wedding, so you can teach her, so you can get her to teach you Azuna and another character. What a greedy, selfish act!
In-game logic.
Way, don't you think Seymour in this game is basically Bowser? In that he shows up, takes the main character's girl, and instead of like any other grand plans for her or any great evil, he's just like, no, we're just going to get married. It gets really married.
Does he have a sick ass tux?
He does.
No, he has a stupid haircut.
He does have a dumbass haircut.
Yeah, I just, everything, his voices. Seymour sounds like, you have those games back during this time and before where, they couldn't afford to get like English localization in terms of the voice actors. So they found like the nearest programmer who spoke enough English to get to do the voice in, a language that they weren't fully comfortable with. Seymour sounds a little bit like that.
No, I don't know about that. I think he sounds very, very deliberately sassy. Like, like somebody really non-threatening, somebody that you wouldn't expect to be an evil guy, which is why he's such an evil guy. Like he's trying to kind of catch you off guard.
He feels like otherworldly, which I think is kind of the point.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
But otherworldly, but there is an element of sass to him as well, Garrett, where he's like, there's a little bit of a playful, sort of happy-go-lucky element to him before, he turns into an absolute gobshite monster and ultimately becomes one of the main bad guys of the game.
Not a gobshite monster.
But I think the one big thing about this game that I like more than anything else is the active, like, being able to switch out of characters, like, in battle.
Right.
I think the way that works and the way that opens up so much, tactics in terms of how you approach fights, and the fact that obviously each of your characters has their own distinct flavor, which you can then expand upon within the sphere grid. I think obviously I'm only kind of scratching the surface, and I know that there's like the expert version of the grid where you can be even more insane with like your customization. I can see the potential and what you can do with that and how much you can unlock with that, and I think that like for that, and again, I think with this game, systems wise, thumbs up. I really have, like, other than again a couple of UI things, I think my biggest like fucking UI UX frustration I have is that you'll go on to the equip screen for your character, and you can go across, you can press the bumper shoulders, that takes you across each character, and you can immediately see what you can equip and what you can see like what options are available. That's all good, that's great. For some reason though, so with Final Fantasy X, it gives you the option to customize weapon and armor. So if you've got like a piece of armor that has 3 slots and one of them has HP 10, you can then add another 2 as well. But the problem is instead of like giving you the same sort of screen where you can bump across characters and then pick from like the list of armor or weapons that's available for them, it just gives you one long list of all of the weapons and armor. And it's not the biggest deal breaker, but it's one of those things that's like, you've given me this here, this perfectly convenient way to go across the characters and the weapons and armor. Why did you have to just give me one fucking long list that I have to scroll? Because I have a lot of weapons and armor now, so it takes you, like a good 30 seconds to scroll down to the bottom to find whatever it is I'm looking for. It's not a deal breaker, but I think it's one of those things that if you looked at this as like a remaster, you'd be like, that's a little kind of quality of life feature that I could tweak there.
But you can sort your armor and your weapons and stuff. You can sort it. Like,
you should also just sell some of your armor.
Again, but there's no, because like so much of my armor and weapons have like different perks and buffs. Like this one is fireproof, or this one is waterproof, blah blah blah. So I don't want to sell anything because I'm going to stumble across an enemy at some point and have no idea. And this is another thing, and this isn't so much a complaint, but it's a kind of like game design question, because I've thought about this a lot when it comes to Final Fantasy, in that so often you'll come into a fight with a boss and you have like absolutely no idea. Sometimes you can kind of very obviously see that it has like a weakness to fire or whatever. But so many times you go into a fight fairly blind, and so many times you'll go into a fight without even realizing that you're going into a fight and you're not prepared, and you just get like wasted. As compared to something like a Pokemon, where 9 times out of 10 you're going to go into it and you're going to come across a Pokemon that you're aware of, and the sort of layout of the elements is fairly obvious. That you always know that you're going to fight a fighting type Pokemon, and you know that flying and psychic are the way to go. But you can't do that with Final Fantasy. And
can I just point out though that that's probably not the most apt comparison, because Pokemon is at its very core a children's game. So but they're going to telegraph that for you.
I'm not trying to make a comparison here.
But you just compared them.
No, I'm not. No, I didn't compare. What I'm saying is that one type of game does it this way. One type of game does it that way. I'm not comparing. I'm not comparing.
Oxford Dictionary describes the comparison as.
You let me finish. What I'm saying is I can't decide which one is better or worse, not because they're the same, because they're very different. I'm not comparing them. I'm just kind of putting them together and saying, is this like the way that you should do it, or is that the way you should do it? Could be one or the other. I don't know. I find it like, but the thing is, when I play Final Fantasy games, I have to use a walkthrough. Like, I can't imagine if I was 12 playing fucking 9 or 10 or whatever, I'd probably have those kind of 80 to 100 hours spare to just like blindly make my way through this and get wasted 12 times on a boss before figuring it out. I can't imagine doing it now. Like I started like Final Fantasy 9 the other day, and even so with 10, there are so many times where the walkthrough will say like, at this point here, if you haven't collected like X amount of items, there's either no way you're going to get these again, or you're not going to be able to get them again until much later on. And by the way, there's like a super boss that you have to get past. And there's so many things where it's so like not obvious how you would like actually the best thing for me when I think about it is like the with the fucking the triple triad system in FF8 and the way that you get certain cards, there are so many like things and hoops that you have to jump through to get certain things. It's like there's no way anyone would blindly stumble across most of these things.
I think but like it's not an essential component of the game. Like the point is that you're not supposed to collect every card, you know? You're supposed to be like, oh, this character has that card, that's cool, I'll win it from them. And if you don't find other cards, that's fine. It's not like, you know, they gate progress behind any of these things. It's meant to be things you find and collect. It's not meant to be like a thing you have to go get. I think the walkthroughs are causing you stress by being like, you can't get this item that is ultimately inessential, but you can't get it anymore, so it's making you feel stressful.
Yeah. No, well, you can get it later in the game. Or like in that instance, back in the day, people just used to play a game and just fucking figure stuff out. And like, you didn't have to have the exact same experience as everyone else. Like,
it's fine.
You would just explore it.
And then that's what makes playing it again, because you find something you never saw before. It's like, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, it's also that I don't want to get stuck on a boss for like 5 hours because I either didn't have like this specific weapon.
Let me tell you about a little game called Elden Ring I recently completed.
I was gonna say, but like in a Final Fantasy game, I've never been stuck on a boss for 5 hours, because after the first couple of times you die, you figure out, because most Final Fantasy bosses at most will have like 4 or 5 attacks, and I guess it's the same in Elden Ring as well, but Elden Ring it's a lot harder because you have to position yourself right, time your dodges.
It's a turn-based game, so it's totally different.
Yeah, exactly. So you can build up an arsenal of tactics on how to beat something very, very quickly in a Final Fantasy game. Like, the only bosses that ever really cause me real pain are the sort of side bosses, like the non-optional bosses, like all of the Aeons you're collecting, you know, with Yuna and going through the temples and stuff. Like, at some stage, there's like you can get like a dark version of them that you can battle to kind of unlock like a sort of more powerful version of the Aeon, like, as you go later on into the game, which isn't really messing around with anything with the story, but it like, those are the really hard bosses, you know, those are the ones that are really, but the main story bosses, like if you've been playing the game diligently enough to be leveled up and have like parts of the sphere grid locked across, and you might bash your head up against a couple for a few turns, but after a while you just learn the patterns.
Yeah, but again, like a lot of the time, either you learn the patterns or you kind of brute force it.
That's the game.
Yeah,
you fight the boss and you work
I know.
But like the thing I would say is that like progress is never gated behind items in these games, ever.
No.
It'll make it easier if you have the right items, but not dramatically. It's usually just whatever level you are.
Well, in fairness, sometimes progress is gated behind you needing to grind for the next 3 hours.
Welcome to JRPGs, my friend. Though I think like the original SNES versions of like 5 is probably the worst for that. Maybe 4 as well. They've eased them in some of the new editions. I don't think like 7 to 10 or even 12 are like that, really. 10 has some difficulty spikes if you don't like somewhat exploit the sphere grid. You're coming up on some of them, so I think you'll have a great time as you get towards Anarchy. There is some real difficulty. There's some bosses there, pieces of shit in this game.
Back to the sphere grid. I just typed into Google the phrase zoom out sphere grid Final Fantasy X. Top result tells you how to zoom out on the sphere grid.
No, good to know. I think the thing with you talked there about like you know, having to take on a boss, you know, multiple times to get through it. The thing is, I think like that compared to say you know, if I have a boss fight in a kind of more twitchy style like hack and slash, I guess even using Elden Ring, or like a Cuphead or something like that. That style of game where there's the kind of like action response and sort of skill level, and there obviously is skill in turn-based fights in terms of learning the systems and whatnot. But I'd rather spend an hour on that type of boss fight than an hour on a turn-based kind of style of boss fight. But obviously that is just purely a preference, and that one is mine. The one other thing, Jack, you just mentioned there, the dungeons or the temples or whatever you want to call this game, fucking trash.
I love them for
the worst.
You have done the ice one is the worst. I hate that one so much.
Yeah, they're just I fucking hate
the
them.
song just tormenting you.
The song is the worst.
It is it's the perfect song in the sense that it is almost taunting you for being stupid.
It's absolute fucking trash.
You're like, I can't do these stupid puzzles. I don't know. And I love the limitation that you can only hold one orb, even though you have two hands, but you can only hold one orb at once. It's so video gamey.
It feels like, you know when
each orb.
Yeah, you can't hold a second orb. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
You know when you play a game and like it has like either like a mini game or some little kind of bit where like, you know, they spent, you know, a month putting this together and it feels so fucking tacked on and janky compared to the rest of this really kind of well-crafted thing. This is what these fucking dungeons feel like. It's just, I can't... It
falls into one of my long-standing video game hot takes that any non-puzzle game that has puzzles, take them out.
Yes.
They're always trash. They're always terrible. If you're not a puzzle game... Don't put puzzles in your game. Yeah. They're always bad. There never changes of pace. They're always frustrating, and they will always be the part of the game that at the end you're like, I wish they took them out.
There's one good temple, I think, in Final Fantasy X. I don't know if you would agree with me, but I think the Bavel temple is cool, Garrett, with all the different platforms.
Yeah, at least it has like a concept, which I like. Because a lot of them are like, just like, put the right orb in the right slot.
Yeah, put the thing in the thing, yeah. Like, there's no... It's not meant to be, like, your traditional, you know, proper puzzle, Zelda-style temple. They are kind of unnecessary. But the Bavel temple puzzle, I think, with the platforms, is really cool. It looks cool as well.
I was going to say, is that the one with, like, the kind of, like, sort of neon lights?
It's the one with, like, the travelators where you're constantly moving.
Yeah,
you're right before.
I don't know, like that, but I just
like literally right on the cusp.
I know. I'm in Bavel at the moment, but it's the one thing from when I was younger. I don't know if it was you, Jack, or it might have even been our friend Andrew, but it's the one thing I remember from seeing one of you guys playing it is that particular dungeon, because I remember like the visual design of it, and I remember looking at it going, "Oh, it looks pretty cool," but not giving a shit because it's Final Fantasy, obviously. So I'm gonna get to that.
Have you ridden Zishuba? That is the question.
I have ridden.
My favorite part of that game is just talking to your man Machen, and he's like, "Let me sit you down for 20 minutes while I tell you the lore of the world." And I sit there and I learn the lore of the world. It's great.
Yeah. Oh, and this game, and I mentioned this in one of our group chats earlier. This game really, really wants to tell you that Lulu has tits, and will show you at any given opportunity. And actually, not most of, but quite a few of the sort of the female character designs in this game in terms of their attire of choice is very much from the early 2000s.
Yeah, it is a Japanese video game from 2002.
Yes.
I very much enjoyed the stereo. Yeah.
Like literally, because I played the start of this game recently. I actually played some of it on the plane in home from Toronto. And like when you see Riku at the start of the game, they frame her butt in every shot. Every single shot. There's like butt right there.
Yeah. And the very unfortunate thing is that, you know, her, like, I'm sure she's not underage, but a lot of her mannerisms and portrayal and character design, it makes you think that she's like a very young woman.
You're in murky territory when you have to say, I'm sure she's not.
Yeah.
It's a very sort of like kawaii Japanese, like schoolgirl kind of.
She's Ed from Cowboy Bebop, like in so much of her mannerism.
Yeah, like she has like I'd say more like the traditional like anime girl and a kind of, you know, Japanese things style, but also her backstory and the story of the Albed people in the game I think is really cool. Like it's
and that's the thing. I do think, like, in terms of the backstory and the actual overall
phenomenal
plot,
world building.
I do think
game.
The whole kind of concept of sin and world building. There's a lot there. I mean, I just think a lot of the execution.
If this game, I wonder if you went into this game and you're like, I'm turning the voices off, and you literally just read the text, I think you'd enjoy this game like 40% more.
I probably would. Do you know what I will enjoy? I will enjoy the sort of 2-hour fucking deep dive that exists on YouTube by someone. I'll probably enjoy that more in terms of explaining the world of Final Fantasy X than the actual game does itself. Please do.
Garrett,
I will watch it.
Please. I want to watch that, like, right now. You can log off the rest of this podcast.
As we come back,
you will receive your full fee for the
Garrett's
podcast.
A Final Fantasy lore YouTuber now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But so I don't know if I'll have 10 finished by next week. I feel like by looking through the walkthrough, there's like 4 chapters ish left to do, but I was scrolling through and I was seeing a lot of bosses coming up. So yes, I imagine that's going to be fun. But
also, you need to get the full backstory of the Raid issue buff.
Also, we didn't touch on Blitzball.
Yes.
How much Blitzball have you been playing? Oh, get off the call, Dave! Kick him! Dave, kick him off!
I might hate Blitzball more than the dungeons.
Man.
In this game.
He was so bad at it, like Garrett, when I was on the phone with him, like he just wasn't getting the tactics at all.
Yes, I don't know if it's still up there, but there is. I did Twitch stream it the week before last. I don't know if it's still up there, but I Twitch streamed it for about an hour or so. Like the Blitz, the game that you have to play. And I
never mind the Final Fantasy lore movie. We're going to do a full sports movie around teaching Mark Blitzball.
Yeah. You could get real good at it. Also, Mark, like the more, because as you go around the world, you can recruit Blitzball players now.
Yeah.
Which makes
I know you can do that.
Yeah, it makes things so much easier, like as you get later in the game, because that is
but it doesn't make the
to your
gameplay
Aurochs. Let them grow and develop over time. It's more satisfying.
For some of them it is, but like some of them are so hopeless. Plus, I really like signing Parguado. Like he was my guy every time.
Brother was my guy on the airship. He did like phenomenal speed on him, so he could just like blitz past everyone. Pardon the pun. The worst thing is like I let Datto go, and then he went to the Luca Goers and became like my arch nemesis. He became so good.
I fucking hate the Luca
like,
Goers.
Fucking Datto. How was I supposed to know you were like the ace of Blitzball?
To be fair to Mark as well, that first Blitzball game against the Goers.
Oh, you're doomed if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, it is really it's really tough, but like you need to kind of learn from your mistakes on it. It's like, did you keep replaying it and beat it eventually, Mark, or did you just
I think I played it like another 2 times. I can't remember if I did it off stream that night or I did it the morning, but I did
because you can like get good at Blitzball and win your Blitzball games by like understanding the game, but that first one, it's like you have to like know how to exploit the Blitzball systems to really have a good chance of winning, and even then
And also, but the other thing as well is I got the eject shot, and like again, and all right, this is my one last thing, and then we'll sign off on this, right? So the tutorial that it gives you about how to learn the eject shot, right? It goes, you need to press like these button prompts.
Yep.
But the way it gives it to you is it gives you like down, right, X or down, right, RB, whatever it is, left, right, LB or whatever. But you look at the way you look at it, where it says down, right, and we'll say X, you would think that you have to press down, right, and X. What you actually need to do is that's actually meant to be a diagonal, like down, right. But it doesn't give you just like a single arrow in that diagonal direction. You look at it and you think like from kind of, I don't know, like Mortal Kombat or any kind of fighting game, you're like, oh, that's a down, right you want me to do. So I failed that thing about 8 times in a row because the game doesn't tell you that's a diagonal approach. I just kind of like went, I guess I'll fucking try that because I've tried everything else. And then on top of that as well, it doesn't really signify that what comes afterwards isn't those arrows. It just gives you your old man just fucking shouting things on the screen.
Putting you down and all. It's like, you stupid piece of shit. You're a useless kid.
Just shitting on you. Yep.
That whole tutorial, like when I think about things in terms of just like a poor
you can't
UI
do
UX
it, kid.
That I would just completely
I'm the best.
Yeah.
You can't do it, kid.
Poorly implemented.
I love that bit because I just think it's such a it explains a big part of Titus's personality.
But in terms of like actual kind of like storytelling and kind of fusing gameplay and world building, like thumbs up. I just think again the fucking execution of it is like, oh my god, I would have done it so differently.
It's really not.
Yeah,
but it's not asking for a diagonal arrow. It's saying down, right, or up, left.
Doesn't it say them at the same time though? Like it has
no.
He's saying it goes down and then it goes right. I actually can't.
No, in my playing of the game is literally just like hold the stick in the direction of the prompt and press X.
Yeah, the direction. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if that's like a HD collection thing or something, but it's telling me up.
You can't do it, kid.
Up, down, left, right, checky.
What's that, Jack?
Up, down, left, right, checky. No, I think the. Are you playing the HD remaster or are you playing?
Yes,
you are.
I'm playing the HD remaster.
Very important question. This is like a deal breaker. New music or remix music? have you changed the music?
I mean, to be honest, I've listened to like a little bit of it, but I've had it on quite.
Oh, no
quite
wonder
in
you don't
background
like this game.
just
But also
Yeah, man,
original
music
music,
rules.
new music bad.
Yeah, they over. There's it's just too busy, isn't it? Like the newer versions.
Yeah, like I'm playing the Pixel remasters,
Like,
and they actually did a really good job with the music in those. It's like, they actually made them like fuller pieces.
Yeah, they're really
but
good.
the FF10 music, they absolutely
they
butchered.
Yeah, but they trim back. The thing is, though, Garrett, because those original Pixel games, you only had so much fucking like
it's like a 15-second
capability
loop
of having two instruments. Yeah,
Well,
like at the same time.
there's only like 8 tracks of music that you have to work with on like those kind of 16-bit on the SNES.
Yeah,
I guess.
precisely that. Yeah, Mark. It's like so. Therefore, when they had something that was, I mean, the Final Fantasy X soundtrack, it didn't really need changing. Like you could have remastered it maybe and compressed it a bit more and brought the volume up or whatever, which I wouldn't have liked doing anyway because I think the dynamics of it are so beautiful. Like Tizanakand is like I actively nearly weep every time I hear that song. It's just such a beautiful piece of music, and like the swells and stuff in it just bring you into the emotion of the music so much more than just all of it being at the same volume and then having like no dynamic range and no emotional like gut punch. So they did that, but then also just added a load of polyphonic nonsense on top of it as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I've found that I registered more with the FF4 soundtrack and like of the, look, FF16 has a number of issues, but as we've all kind of documented, the soundtrack's other thing is pretty fun.
Not as good as 10's though. 10's is
like
a better soundtrack.
I've had the battle theme to FF16 in my head for about 3 weeks straight now. The da 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 na 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 na, like just I'm ready to go. Let's fucking do this.
And did you genuinely not love the opening section with Otherworld where you get like the FMV and the Blitzball and the metal?
Well, again, I've seen that bit about fucking 5 or 6 different times.
And it
now,
rocks
so.
though. Like,
It's all right. It's fine.
Come on now, that rocks.
All right. Final Fantasy
There's
X,
the kid
it's
in
all right,
Kilika
it's fine,
that you
it
walk
rocks.
up to and he's like, I want to be a blitzball when I grow up. And I'm like, good job, kid, you did it.
Yep. And then,
I
Tyler
guess-
swoops him off the screen. But make sure he presses the diagonal button.
I guess the big thing that will come after this is like, as I said, I have started
Game's so
FF9.
good.
But
If you hate
like,
9
do I-
too, we will have to actually
do
fuss.
Yeah, if in particular, if you hate Vivi's story in 9, you may not have a song.
Me and Jack will be coming to your house.
Well, we'll see. But do I go to 10-2 straight after
I like
10?
10 too.
Is it worth?
Nice little game.
It's so. Do you know what? 10-2 feels like a sort of K-pop version of Final Fantasy X.
It's so like,
where
the problem,
everything is
that is the problem. Like in that it's like so silly that people are like, how dare they do this with Final Fantasy X? But like, take it for what it is. It's a nice little time.
Yeah, it's just.
I mean, it sounds like I'm not going to have the affinity by the end with 10 that I probably
I
might
don't know.
enjoy
10 like
2 for
there's
being that
some
weird.
wonkiness with like what ends up being the final boss and the final act, but 10 is a really good ending that might get you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
It's a brilliant
All right,
ending.
look, I'll hold out. I guess we'll see where we are next week.
Also, the thing that's cool about 10-2 as well, Mark, is that it's actually fronted by 3 female characters. Final Fantasy up to that point never done that before.
Most franchises.
Yeah.
Most franchises still haven't done
that
that.
is cool.
Yeah. And they do it. Do you know what Final Fantasy? And I don't know if this is an apt comparison, Garrett, because you may have like dabbled more into these games. Final Fantasy X-2 is the closest Final Fantasy will ever come to being a Yakuza game in terms of the wackiness.
I enjoy that game. It's very silly.
Yeah,
like
it's
it
just
has a job system, but you
Well,
change the jobs by changing clothes and dresses. Yeah,
outfits. Yes. Exactly. Like you can change full on, like change your entire outfit going into battle, and that way, then signified what that character is able to do in that battle as well, which I think is cool.
The one last question I'm just gonna have for you two as well is like, is this the last like what I guess feels like a traditional Final Fantasy game?
like 12 is like a single player MMO.
Yeah, it's like a hybrid, but it has Final Fantasy elements. Like that's not completely gone. But the way you move around the environment and the way that you battle, like it's not an encounter-based thing anymore. It's a thing is on battlefield, you walk up to it and you start fighting kind of game.
Maybe I'll just go to
because like
Dragon
1
Quest
to 10
afterwards.
there is like an idea of a Final Fantasy game, and then all of the ones after that are
Yeah.
just different. They're just completely different games from each other. There is no consistency anymore.
but 12 also has Baltier, who is very fucking cool.
That game is Star Wars.
He is.
Like, there's Fran is Chewbacca, and Vaughn is Luke Skywalker. Like, it is literally Star Wars. Like, to the degree that 16 is Game of Thrones, 12 is just Star Wars. You're literally like sky pirates on your sky pirate ship that might as well be the Millennium Falcon.
I do like Sky Pirates.
Yeah, Balthier is like the ultimate gentleman sky
He's
pilot.
Han Solo. Like, he's literally Han Solo.
He's Han Solo, but
British.
like British, like, but not like
worse.
Colonial British, like cool. Just actually really fucking cool. Baltier. By miles the coolest character in that game. And yeah, instead of the Force, we have spheres. That's the difference.